Hello and welcome. Yes, it's another very fine super selection of terrible tales here. It's Radio 2's Confessions podcast, all originating from the fabulous Drive Time show, where we have the most sinning listeners in the history of radio. Here we go then with a concise collection including Manky Milkshake Mischief, sounds revolting, a pregnant parking pause, a musketeer's moving mishap, and terrifying tartan trauma. Very nice. Here it all comes. And a confession back here, then, and then the Confessions podcast will be available at the end of the week. And my memory is that Carthy is quite stern and unforgiving.
That's true.
That is true. And your mum has texted in with the answer on the sesame seed question.
Yep.
What do sesame seeds grow up into? Anyway, so we should definitely include her in the answers, but she has to wait her turn. So tonight's confession comes from Tom. And Tom says, Father Simon and the Fantastic Forgivers, I should like to thank you for the many hours I've spent listening to your podcast, because it's one of the few things I have access to that remind me of home. This is because I live in Burma, also known as Myanmar, and currently being a licence fee non-payer, I cannot enjoy most of what the wonderful BBC has to offer. I don't know how this got through, but anyway, it's going very well so far. For those of you that are ignorant of the geopolitics of Burma, put your hands up. Suffice to say that it is a unique country, long cut off from the outside world and only recently opened up to tourism. The recent elections here are paving the way for a new life for the 60... In case you're thinking, Confessions has taken a strange turn since I've been away, it gets to the story in just a moment. Maybe a bit of a cliche, says Tom. However, it is widely acknowledged that the Burmese are the friendliest, most genuine and most generous people you could ever meet. They will happily give you gifts when you have done nothing in particular to deserve them, even when the cost to them of the gift is greater than their average daily earnings, and the average daily earnings is £1 a day. The Burmese are hard workers, willing to learn, but I have to tell you, stubborn as mules when faced with anything that might contradict something that they know to be true. I work in a hostel here and have many staff working with me, and on many occasions I have taught them how to work in a more Western style, which may not come naturally. For example, persuading them to use a spreadsheet on a computer to file your accounts is actually easier than writing it all out on paper in triplicate. They do like their bureaucracy here. And that it is okay to say, I don't know, in answer to any questions. They find it very hard to say anything other than yes, no matter the question, because they don't want to disappoint a visitor. This leads me to my confession. One day, I was faced with a problem that has reared its inexplicable head many times before. A guest had asked for a watermelon shake with a dash of lime juice. Now, in Burma, for some reason, it has been drilled into every worker's mind that milk and lime together becomes a fatal poison. As a result, my staff steadfastly refuse to serve it and will stand firm in the face of their stupid Western co-workers. Given their normal reticence saying no to Westerners, this is quite a sight to behold. This time I just couldn't stand back and let them disappoint yet another customer. So I made a point of pouring out a small shot of milk in front of the entire bar staff and squeezing a small lime into it. I knew it wouldn't taste nice, but I was taking one for the team. Before I had even taken a sip, they were practically tackling me to the floor, snatching the milk out of my hand, pulling on my arms and forcibly blocking me from opening the fridge door. However, I managed to fend off their attacks of compassion, and I downed the shot. The look on their faces was priceless. Nevertheless, I didn't enjoy the drink, and as I swallowed, had a moment of doubt, thinking to myself, actually, am I really sure that this isn't a poison? Maybe I should have checked first. Here's my favourite line, okay?
Go on.
It was then I decided to fake my own death.
Oh.
Of course, it's what you're going to do. I feigned collapsing on the floor, writhing in agony with stomach cramps, a little bit of dribble out the side of my mouth, that kind of thing. And of course, everyone was horrified, nay, terrified. I kept it going for quite a few minutes, then miraculously revived. It's okay, I'm fine. And I showed them I was okay and that no harm had been done, and that they should ignore everything that was ever taught to them about milk and lime. I still think they don't believe me, and that actually I was just lucky I didn't drink quite enough to kill me. I don't think I need to ask for forgiveness from my local co-workers because they really should have learnt by now from my repeated assertions that nothing will happen to you. And also, I think that they really do like me, hence the attempt at saving my life. However, I would like to ask forgiveness from all the customers, past and future, who were refused the drink that they'd ordered or will order because of my inability to effectively teach everybody that to add a dash of lime to a drink with milk in it is absolutely fine. And they should really learn from everything that I've told them.
Oh.
But do you know, I was slightly uncertain, so I did look up.
Yes.
I did go, what happens when you add milk to lime?
Go on.
Because it's fine. I mean, it's not very
Does it
tasty,
curdle,
and
surely?
it might curdle.
Yes.
It may well curdle, but does that mean it's a deadly poison? I think it doesn't. Anyway, it's our first Burmese confession, Myanmar confession. Tom, who runs the hostel, would like some forgiveness. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
Well, first of all, Tom, you've got a lovely team of people working for you. That sound like a fantastic group. It's a bit like working at the BBC there, isn't it, really?
Oh, yeah.
You're describing just how it is
If
for us.
we thought you were drinking something inappropriate, we would rugby tackle you to the ground.
Stop me, wouldn't you,
You're not
Simon?
having your sixth Guinness before the show, Bobby Pryor.
Okay. Oh, so lovely, lovely team. Great story as well. And I think it is based on that experience. If you put lime juice or lemon juice in milk and it could curdle. I'm not sure of the science of that, but I think there are times when it just goes. So I think actually it's based on some kind of truth. It's not.
No, it's not. No, it's not. There's no
it's not
truth.
pleasant and it might make you ill and you've got sour milk. I don't know, but I'm just saying is I think it's based on some kind of culinary expertise that they don't mix well.
No.
However, I don't think I can forgive you, Tom, because these seem like really lovely, trusting people and trying to teach them the ways of West. Well, I don't know. It's one of the things, cultural differences, you see, and beliefs.
Yeah, but one was true and one wasn't. Anyway,
so Tom, just for taking the mickey out of your lovely, lovely staff who are trusting and lovely, you are not forgiven, Tom.
Sister Carthy, what are you saying?
I think for taking us away from this rainy, dreary scene of rooftops where all the rain is over us and taking us somewhere slightly more exotic with a very great description at the start. And also, I use paper and pen for everything. You know when you go on holiday and everybody owes lots of money and then one person has to sort it all out?
Yes.
That's always me, and I don't use a spreadsheet. I use pen and paper. So I think I'm siding with the people that were in Burma as opposed to siding with Tom on this one. And I do think, curdling, which could make you very ill, probably couldn't kill you.
You can add lime to milk. It's
it will
fine.
curdle though, surely.
Well, it might do, but it's not going to kill you.
It doesn't look nice in the glass, though, does it?
Question, is it a fatal poison?
No.
No, it's not.
And I like the way that he used his humour, and that was very amusing, and I think that they probably in the long term forgave him, and therefore I'm going against my normal rule and I am going to forgive.
Here's tonight's confession then, and it comes from Huckleberry. Thank you, Huckleberry, for this interesting tale. Father Simon, the Forgiving Collective. I feel that I have sinned, that the circumstances around the incident somehow justify the fateful deed. I think we will be the judge of that. I have changed some minor details and omitted others to prevent possible legal ramifications and possible prosecution.
Have we changed the name, Simon?
Well, the trouble is with that is when Huckleberry says things like that, then we might change them again, but then by accident it might go back to the actual name. One day that's going to happen, and all the names and facts will be true because they've been changed so many times.
Go to jail.
And then someone will go to jail, but it won't be me, so that'll be fine. It'll either be Claire, who's the producer, or Helen, who's the editor, or Bob, who's the boss. One of those will end up in jail, or all three of them, but it won't be us. So we can say anything, really.
Excellent.
I have had many jobs, says Huckleberry. Most of these have been in the motor trade, cooped up in a dimly lit garage with a constant odour of oil and dust, and often with a decor comprising of peeling paint, a random spattering of business cards, and a selection of risque posters. Anyway, I needed a change. I saw a job advertised which offered a break from the norm. Fresh air. I duly applied, and in June 2004, I took up my new post in a local tourist town. He says vaguely. For the first time, I was enjoying a job out in the open, and although the rain was a bit of a drag, the sunny days made up for it. I had never eaten as much ice cream as I did at this time. It is here that I have to point out that I am a nice guy. I like helping people and will go the extra mile for someone in need. I'd had my job about a year, and it was then that the damsel in distress appeared. It's a mid-afternoon, hot July day, and I'm going about my business, and I was approached by a young lady who was obviously upset. I will call her Anna. Anna appeared to be in her late 20s, of slight build, but showing obvious signs of being in the latter stages of pregnancy. Whilst I tried to console her, Anna explained that she was already late to pick up her other child from the school gate. Where we were, building once stood, but long since been demolished. The ground was now used by the locals as a small unofficial car park, and Anna's car was parked here. The roads around all displayed double yellow lines, with the exception of the entrance to the old building plot. This parking area was full to bursting, probably with the number of summer tourists, and the roads were littered with cars, seemingly abandoned. One such driver had tried to avoid the yellow lines by parking in the entrance to this very car park. That's in the entrance. Bobby's going to go mad about this parking indiscretion. You hate things like this. One such driver had tried to avoid the yellow lines. I mentioned that. I'm going to call this inconsiderate driver Pierre. Anna and about a dozen others were completely trapped in this car park at the whim of this selfish opportunist. She appealed to me to do something. Well, I looked at the car. It was a small French hatchback. My motor trade background told me that the handbrake was a weak point on these cars, and the car was pretty light to start with. So I did what any self-respecting superhero would do. I put my back against the tailgate, my hands under the rear bumper, and allowed my rugby player's legs to do the hard work. I probably went red in the face, but it moved a bit. I shoved once more, and it moved a bit more. A few seconds later, and the car had moved enough so that Anna was set free from her confines, and she thanked me profusely. I'm sure I would have even got a peck on the cheek if she wasn't in so much of a rush, and if I hadn't been quite so sweaty. As a few other drivers made their way out of the car park, and some others made their way in, I looked at the car. It was now on double yellow lines. I had a dilemma. By the way, did I tell you I'm a car park attendant? Do I walk away, or do I deal with the car? Do I walk away, or do I deal with the car? It was a difficult and awkward position to be in, so I manned up. I put my hat back on, my car park attending hat, and I took out my parking attendant's notebook, and I got to work. A few minutes later, and Pierre was the proud owner of a £60 penalty charge notice. He then got towed away. Oh well, Pierre was a plonker, and that's enough for me. In my defence, this was not my usual way of thinking. I was the nicest parking attendant you would ever have the misfortune to come across. I didn't like the work, I just wanted a bit of fresh air, you see. I'm at the will of the Holy Unity and Trinity there. May you be as forgiving as I hope. I am on bended knee awaiting the passing of godly justice. Well, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing because clearly Pierre had been very, very selfish in putting his car right across the entrance, and so therefore maybe he's going to get everything that's coming his way. But a £60 parking ticket gets the car moved, and then it gets it towed away.
The problem I have is Pierre might have actually not known that he was at the entrance. That might not have been obvious.
It's the entrance to a car park,
Yeah,
Bobby.
but it wasn't, was it? It was a building site that was being used as a car park. It might not have been obvious. He might have thought the site. He or she might. Well, you see, that's the thing I'm slightly not sure of because I don't know absolutely.
Well, there were double yellow lines everywhere else, so it's fairly obviously an area where there's a.
Use your eyes. You look. See, there's lots of cars parked.
But
where
they
else
might
can
have
they get
been
out?
in an equal panic, had to run to the hospital, thought, brilliant, I'm not parking on double yellows, I'm going to run now. So I'm just playing devil's advocate
You're talking
here.
nonsense.
No, I think the other thing is that it was Huckleberry that pushed it into the offending area, into the double yellow lines.
Yes, that's
he
true.
wasn't in the offending area, so he wasn't in the position to give the parking ticket
Listen,
because the driver didn't leave it.
I was a car park attendant once.
Yeah.
And
Did you do this? Was this you?
no,
Are you talking about Huckleberry or yourself here?
Yeah.
I was a car park attendant.
Yeah.
In multi-storey car parks in Worthing. And I
wow.
got hit twice by fishermen who were very cross because I'd given them a ticket quite legitimately.
But can I just say,
What?
Pierre was
Legitimately
parked
being the word.
legally, not on a double yellow line. He pushed it onto the double yellow line, and it wasn't his right to push it. And he was also, this was a gender specific.
I think this is ridiculous.
He is not forgiven.
Yes.
At all. Because also, I don't think it has saved a man who can get out of the car park. I think it's because he wanted to be Huckleberry Hero.
I think
so you're not forgiven on two counts.
I think Pierre had it coming. What do you think, Carthy?
I'm a bit dilemmaed. I think you're not allowed to touch the car, though, are you? As you might know the answer to this. As a
Car park attendant?
yeah.
Why can't you touch
Well,
the car?
I thought because when there's snow on your windscreen, if you can't see whether you've got a ticket on the windscreen, they're not allowed to take the snow off the windscreen to see if you've got a ticket.
Oh, this
Is
is
that
all
true?
nonsense. What are you talking about?
I'm sure that's true. So that means they then can't give you a parking ticket because they're not allowed to take. They're not allowed
Yes.
to touch the car.
No.
So
Yes.
therefore, he's pushed the car into an
But
area.
he
and
was
he's not-
helping a woman who was about to give birth. Where's your heart? Your mum will be so ashamed. You can't remember any of your Greek. You can't remember any Latin. You don't know anything about anything.
But I'm being quite serious about this one. I don't think you're allowed to touch the car, so therefore it's his own fault.
I don't think that's right.
Of Huckleberry.
I think it's in a parking terms and
Anyway.
conditions. You're responsible for displaying
Whatever.
a ticket. It's your fault if they can't see it.
Drive time confession, which comes from Charlie. Is this all right? Slightly PG? Slightly PG.
Slightly.
Has anyone checked it?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. What are you suggesting? It's gone through all the usual process. It's been discussed at the highest level.
Everyone's
And
checked
it's
it.
slightly PG. Anyway, it comes from Charlie. Simon and the Forgiving Collective. I asked forgiveness for something which happened back in 1981. Willie, Rob and I had been best mates since school and were still best mates years later, sharing a house and working in the same office in town. At school, we called ourselves the Three Musketeers and were infamous for being rather boisterous. We were always playing pranks on each other and others. Anyway, as George Harrison once said, all things must pass, 1971, and Willie met and fell in love with a rather diminutive and fiery Scots lady called Norma, who was soon to take him away from the realms of blokedom and into a future life of quiet respectability in suburbia. The time leading up to the wedding was rather fraught. Willie and Norma in the process of buying their first house on a big new development in town, preparing for the wedding and that kind of thing. And it was strictly a time for no nonsense for the three of us. They were the instructions. The wedding passed uneventfully, partly due to the fact that the groom and the other two musketeers were rather subdued after the previous night's stag do, because these were the days of a single stag night immediately before the wedding. None of this weekend or a whole week before nonsense. Asking for trouble. Norma had her gimlet eyes on us, and we knew that there were to be no shenanigans at the reception. She wasn't too happy with us after the stag night, and also they'd been promised the keys to their new house before the wedding, but the house was not quite ready. On the following Monday, we were surprised to see Willie rush into the office. He was due to fly off on honeymoon later that day. In his hands, a bunch of keys to his new house. "Guys," he says, "I've got the keys, but the bed's being delivered while we're away. I need someone to look after this." Of course, Rob and I said we'd do it, but Willie paused, looked at us and said, "Nah, can't trust you. Norma would kill me if you did anything stupid." As if we would. He gave the keys to Colin in the office. Colin was sensible. "Colin, could you look after this, mate? House is on the new estate. It's 6 Ladbroke. That's the address, thanks." Colin, of course, would look after it perfectly. A week passed. It was rather dull without our old mate, but then we thought it would be a wizard wheeze to prepare a surprise at Willie's new house for when he came back. Clearly, we didn't have the keys, because sensible Colin had those, so we couldn't get into the house, but we could probably arrange a suitable tableau in the garden to show Willie he should have trusted his mates and not Colin to look after the house while he was away. So armed with some deck chairs, a lot of empty beer cans, wine bottles, paper cups, ashtrays full of old fags, plastic cutlery, a couple of inflatable toys, we headed off to the new estate one Sunday morning when Willie was due back later in the evening. We soon found number 6 Ladbroke in the warren of new houses. The builders were still on site. It was one of those developments where people are moving in whilst the building is still going on. It was a very neat and respectable looking empty semi-detached, and the garden was newly turfed. It didn't take us long to make it look like the horrible aftermath of a raucous party, and left chuckling at our cleverness. Don't you love boisterous people? Willie came into the office on Monday morning and headed straight for Colin. Rob and I were barely able to contain our sniggering behind our hands. "Colin, mate," he says, "thanks a lot for sorting the house out. And the flowers were a great touch. Norma was really chuffed." "Hey, you two reprobates," he says, "come and see my new house," says Willie. Well, Rob and I were a little perplexed as we jumped in his car to drive to the estate. Excuse me. We drove carefully past a young couple in front of number 6 Ladbroke Road, arguing with a guy in a hard hat. The red-faced husband was holding an inflatable toy under his arm as his wife was haranguing the site manager. We arrived at 6 Ladbroke Grove, where Colin had also hung a welcome home sign on Willie's front door. And so obviously I have to ask forgiveness from the young couple at number 6. The site manager, and, of course, Norma. Well, the thing is, Norma was right all along. Norma, never mind her gimlet eye and everything else, she knew exactly the right thing to do. They just got the wrong address. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
Yeah, actually, I really like this because I like the fact that you care enough to still have fun. Norma's got him, but he still can be one of the lads and part of the gang, even while you're away. Actually, obviously, the inflatable Lilo and the dinghy went down well, didn't they, with a young couple?
It's amazing what use they are at parties, but yes, that's right, the inflatable Lilo was there.
And the deck chairs.
It was a good tableau, yes.
So actually, I like this. Good sense of fun. Willie was absolutely right. I'm confused about the address, though. So obviously, when he shouted the address across the office to sensible Colin, he obviously shouted the wrong address, or they misheard it.
I think they misheard.
They misheard it. You know what, Rob and Charlie, I like your sense of fun. You're absolutely forgiven.
Let's check in now with Sister Carthy. What do you make of this?
I feel very sorry for the husband that wasn't Charlie and that got left standing there with the inflatable...
the wrong number 6.
The inflatable toys that they had. Colin sounds very sensible and he did a very good job with the flowers in the house. I actually think that they don't really want to be forgiven. They were living up to their boisterous boys' reputation and they had fun. Bit of a nightmare at the end of it, but I'd say not forgiven because I don't think they really want to be forgiven.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Boisterous boys can be rather trying, don't you find?
I agree.
What do you think, Bobby?
Forgiven.
So anyway, here's tonight's tale, which comes from Hector McTarnish, which is the name he's going by. Father Simon and the assembled brethren, the tale starts a number of years ago when I was a 17-year-old schoolboy. I lived with my parents in a small town in the far north of Scotland. No accents, please. Don't worry. You're not getting any. My school had a long tradition of celebrating Burns Day with a concert comprising of dance, sketches and recital in honour of Scotland's favourite son. Tradition dictated that 6th-year pupils only arranged and participated in this event as it was their final year. This provided proud parents and grandparents with a photographic opportunity of the year. Dougal, my best friend, and I decided to audition for the Andy Stewart-type role of host, but we needn't have bothered because this role was destined for Lewis. Every school has a Lewis. Head of the debating committee, rugby captain, straight A's, all-round shiny guy. I hated him. I am convinced that every morning his mother would get him dressed and then put him on the ironing board and iron him to make sure his trouser seams were parallel to his eyes. Anyway, as well as all the above attributes, he was the apple of our music teacher and concert impresario, Miss Watson's eye. Miss Watson was an ancient teacher, always clad in tweed and brogues. She also, Father Simon, hated me with a passion. Result was, Lewis got the plum roll, whilst I had the honour of being microphone passer on. As for Dougal, he was to tend to the costumes, but not to touch or break anything, was the strict instruction. Weeks of practice took place until finally the day of the concert arrived. A full dress rehearsal was due to take place in the morning of the concert. Both our jobs done, Dougal and I sat in the wings watching the run-through. All was going along swimmingly until a giggling Dougal waved a little finger in the direction of Lewis. Dougal whispered to me that Lewis was wearing bright orange underpants below his kilt, and I was shocked. This is an atrocity, as true Scots wear nothing under the kilt. Orange underpants verboten, as we say in Scotland. We felt it our duty to our countrymen to expose this charlatan. There was a packed house that evening, and the concert was going in full swing. Even I have to reluctantly admit that Lewis was doing a great job of hosting. The event drew towards its closing act, and this was where Lewis had to do a small sword dance. The lights would go out, and in the darkness the haggis would be brought in. As the haggis was being delivered onto the table, the spotlight would return to Lewis, and he would address the haggis, finally plunging his dagger into the plated offering. That was the theory. We hoped our cunning plan would soon change this, as we were still hell-bent on exposing the head boy as nothing other than a pant-wearing fraudster. Final costume change underway as Lewis shot behind the changing curtain to drop his tartan trousers, slip into his kilt, and grab his 2 swords and dagger. Not a euphemism. As he pulled up his kilt, he noticed something horribly wrong. The kilt was mysteriously at least 6 inches shorter than it had been at the dress rehearsal. How could that have happened? How could it have shrunk in such a short time? Lewis turned to find an alternative kilt, only to find that the ever-efficient Dougal had packed them all away. No other alternative but to go on in the micro kilt. At last, we thought, with Lewis wearing a girl's kilt that short, people will be bound to see the offending pants, and the oaf will be exposed. The show must go on, and bless him, Lewis did attempt to complete his sword dance wearing his short kilt. But with every sword stepped over, his stride became shorter and shorter, and he got redder and redder. And then the inevitable happened. Feet reduced to a shuffle, Lewis kicked one of the swords. As they were only made of painted balsa wood and very light, it shot across the floor in the direction of Miss Watson, who was directing the choir. For some inexplicable reason, the silly tweed-clad octogenarian decided to skip over the sword. Now, I'm no physicist, but even I know that a polished wooden floor and a leather-soled brogue is a disaster in the making. Miss Watson slipped and landed chin first on the stage. Both the players and the audience froze in horror as the elderly teacher lay motionless on the stage. Only one person had the presence of mind to go and attend to our fallen teacher. Lewis bounded from his stance at the remaining sword and knelt back to the audience, knelt down to see if at least the teacher was breathing. There were cries of horror and squeals of disbelief from the audience, and even polite applause from two elderly ladies. It was then that both Dougal and I realised that theatre etiquette must allow the wearing of underwear at the dress rehearsal. But on the actual night, an artist had to be true to the part. Yep, Lewis was commando. Chaos both on and off the stage as audience members clambered over chairs to get away, others averting their eyes and some quite simply head in hands in despair. Mercifully, Lewis was quickly given a long coat to hide his embarrassment. Our headmaster leapt onto the stage and had the curtains pulled on this farce. Dougal had just enough time to return to the dressing room and take the original kilt from its hiding place to the chair where Lewis had dressed. Father Simon, despite Lewis's protestations, he was held fully responsible for misplacing his kilt and shaming the bard and the good name of our school. Miss Watson returned several days later with a new top set of teeth, cracked glasses and a bruised chin, but now wearing plimsolls for stability. Father Simon, I need forgiveness not from Lewis, who I now know earns a living as a successful corporate lawyer. My job means I bump into him quite a lot because I deliver his milk. Nor do I seek forgiveness from Miss Watson. It is the poor audience I seek forgiveness from, bar two, for having having to experience such a sight that they witnessed that evening. Even now, I imagine them being transported back to the horror of that day every time they have to park their bikes. Yours, Hector McTarnish. I do beg your pardon. Very good. All right. Well, it's an interesting tale there. Who knows? That's the tradition. You can wear orange pants for the dress rehearsal. Cometh the hour. Don't think so. Things have to change. Anyway, what do you say, Sister Bobby?
Well, I was thinking about the orange pants because actually they were quite useful and well-thought addition because, of course, we all know that the national drink of Scotland is Iron Brew, and they kind of matched, so it kind of worked in with the the new and the old traditions there. So I was quite looking forward to the pants. The other thing is, you did manage to usurp not only your schoolhood rival, but you broke a teacher. But the thing is, I don't think you need forgiving from the audience because it seems like the audience probably had the best night they had in a long time.
Oh, well, two of them did anyway. I'm not quite sure about that.
So you don't need to be forgiven from the audience because I'm with the audience and I'd have had an absolute riot. So well done. Having said that, the teacher and poor Lewis. Well, Lewis seems like he got over it. I don't think they need an apology.
So you're forgiving. All right, very good. What's the novice make of it all?
Well, it can get pretty parky in Scotland in January, Burns Night, and obviously Lewis, thought, well, no, I'm going to go native, and he did so. Didn't get his colours for sword dancing, but did enter into it very manfully in every sense.
Okay, I'm very nervous now.
Yeah. So therefore,
yes,
I am going to forgive everyone on this occasion.
Very good.
And the audience.
All right, very good. Okay, Carthy, what are you making of that then?
Well, Nigel knew where that was going way before I did, actually. I didn't quite get that. I actually thought it was going to be a story about toes being cut off by the swords from Lewis.
No, I don't think that one got through somehow.
So it didn't go down that way. I've only been to a couple of big Burns Day celebrations. Weirdly, they were in Doha, in Qatar, so completely not the parky Scotland variety. So I think, again, that the audience know what they're getting into when they go to a Burns Day thing, because the ones I've been to are rather raucous. So I would also say forgiven.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Who did you forgive? Probably no one, I suspect. Your own shadowy secret, please. Maybe inspired by one of those. Do you have something to tell me? I think you do. one or two, in fact. confessions@bbc.co.uk. More in a week, and don't forget you can listen to all our interviews from the week on the iPlayer, assuming you're somewhere in the world that allows you to do that kind of thing. Another book club on Monday brought us Anne M. Martin coming in to chat about How to Find a Lost Dog, which is a book sort of roughly for 9 to 12-year-olds, that kind of thing, and some younger Drive Time listeners who were forced to read it for no money. They gave us their opinions. On Tuesday, David Hepworth came in to talk about the bounteous year of music that was 1971. We could have talked for hours. It was long enough anyway. Wednesday, author Harlan Coben swung by to talk about his new Sky TV series, The Five, and his new best-selling book, Fool Me Once. I say it's best-selling. It's kind of a prediction because all his others have been. And Nigel on Foodie Thursday cooked up braised cabbage and burnt aubergine baganoush, which sounds like a monster from a scary movie. Ba ganoush is the way it goes. Anyway, it's nicer than it sounds, and I think it sounds pretty darn good anyway. So maybe he just needs to rethink some of these recipe titles and everyone will be happy. Anyway, all the details can be found somewhere on my Radio 2 pages. And if you've reached this part of the podcast, could you tweet me saying the wrong sort? Thank you very much.